Well, as we inch closer to the upcoming federal election on October 19th, you may still be deciding who you will vote for or whether you will even participate. As long-term Canadians, we sometimes take this opportunity to vote for granted. But there is one group of people who seem more enthusiastic than most. That would be new Canadians. Maria Shambare is joining me today to talk about voting through the eyes of a newcomer. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. I feel privileged to be here today.
Oh, well, you know, your story is so amazing, but it's so, I think, normal. I do a lot of work overseas, and, you know, the voting process is not always as smooth there as it is here. You grew up in Zimbabwe, and you actually weren't even able to vote for a time. Why was that?
Well, as you may be aware, Zimbabwe went through various phases. Prior to 1980, black people were not allowed to vote in Zimbabwe. There were so many legal impediments to voting. But after independence in April 1980, it became possible for black people to vote.
So you had your first opportunity and experience of voting. What was that like?
It was awesome. I can still remember it very clearly because there was a long build up to it. My parents were very active in promoting to other people to go and vote. Their lives, they had dreamt of the day where it would be possible for black people to vote. So one man, one vote was the slogan that really motivated us all to go and vote.
And you had a great experience that first election, but as the elections continued to roll out, each one, it got harder and harder for you to be able to vote. Why, or what was happening?
In fact, indeed, the first time voting was very easy. There were a lot of resources to fund that first election. There were a lot of polling stations. You didn't have to go far to get to a polling station. They were well organized. There was no disorder. Everything was smooth. The second vote 5 years later was just as smooth. But the third poll going onwards, it became a little difficult. Firstly, it was a resource problem. Secondly, it was the whole atmosphere around the issue of voting. There was less freedom. There was increasing intimidation, so that, especially for those who were in the rural areas, it was difficult to really express your free choice in voting for the person that you wanted to vote for. In the urban areas, it was becoming a lengthy process, standing hours and hours in the queue.
Yeah, your last election, how many hours did you line up to vote?
Actually, I lined up for 9 hours, 9 straight hours in the queue.
And you weren't, that wasn't the longest, right? You had friends, how long were they standing in line?
In fact, up to 36 hours.
36 hours standing in line to vote.
Indeed, indeed.
Why was it so important to you to take that time to vote? Like, what was it about voting that caused you to do that?
Because of a strong belief that my voice matters, and it is my civic duty to contribute to the good governance of the country by me casting my vote.
And you had some disappointment. You stood in line for those 9 hours. You did manage to vote, which I'm sure a lot of people didn't because it was so complicated and difficult. What happened after that when you voted?
I was excited that I finally cast my vote, but very disappointed when the election results were announced, because what I was hearing in the voting line was very different from the result that was announced after the vote.
So the exit polls didn't match the actual results that were announced. So it seemed that there was probably corruption then in that election.
It looked like there was something that went wrong between me casting my vote and my vote being counted.
So what does that do to you when you go to that much effort to vote and it keeps getting harder and then you don't see your voice really reflected? Does that make you never want to vote again? What does it do?
Strangely, it's made me more interested in understanding the process of voting. I was never in any doubt that it was my, not even just a civic duty, but a civic privilege to be able to vote. But what I didn't understand was what was going wrong with the system that made me wait so long And after waiting so long, the results that came out were not what I expected.
You know, it is a privilege, and I think even we forget that it wasn't that long ago in Canada here that women couldn't vote, that we were we were faced with discrimination, and having that privilege now, sometimes we forget about that privilege. You have been in Canada now for quite a number of years. How many years have you been here?
This is actually my 10th year.
10th year.
But becoming a citizen of Canada, this is about the 7th year of being a citizen of Canada.
So the first thing you did, you came here as a refugee, you went through that whole process, and when you became a citizen, what is the first thing that you did?
I wanted to vote. And I was fortunate enough that the year that I got my citizenship was the year federal elections were held. And I was privileged to have a flexible job so that I was able to actually volunteer as an election person. I became a polling officer.
And you actually did that because you wanted to see what our electoral process was like and try to understand why it was so difficult back in your home country. And what did you learn as a polling officer?
I saw that there was nothing difficult about it, and that it was a very convenient process and it didn't have to take time. The standard was that anybody walking into a polling station should not spend more than 2 minutes in the polling station. So I really wanted to see it with my own eyes, and I saw it.
So you sound like you were completely amazed.
I was. It was so orderly. Everybody felt free coming in and out. It was very private. Nobody felt threatened or felt that something bad was going to happen to them afterwards. And I got to understand how it was possible to announce election results soon after the polls closed, because I actually did my tallies, and I was able to end them in on time. And
it happened, and it turned out to reflect the exit polls. Like it felt like what people voted is actually what happened here.
Indeed. There was no argument afterwards about the vote, the results of the vote.
You know, I wanted to talk to you because I know, even myself, growing up in this country, sometimes we get a little bit lazy and our lives are so busy and there's so many distractions. And I think too, it's not that people don't care, but sometimes we feel like, does my vote really count? Like, I'm just one person and there's 30 million people here. You know, what does my vote count? What would you say to somebody who's feeling just a little bit discouraged about that?
I would say this is your golden opportunity to determine what happens to you and your family and your friends. Because here in Canada, your vote counts. It starts with the run-up to the election. You are free to attend meetings held by those who are asking for your vote. And they actually ask you for your vote. And they make themselves available to you after you have voted them in. You are able to hold them to account and remind them of the promises that they've made. So it is not just an obligation, it is an opportunity that one has to take.
You know, I love that. I went out in the street and talked to Canadians about whether they're going to vote and different issues. And I spoke to a woman from Uganda who is here in that process now of becoming a permanent resident and a citizen. And she said to me, you know, I wish I could vote. She said, I wish I can vote and I can't vote. And then people here can vote and they don't vote. And, you know, she just kind of saw that difference. She just sees it differently. And I think you see it differently. And I thank you for sharing your experience, because I think we need to be reminded that we're such a blessed people and we need to take those responsibilities and privileges to heart. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's been great to have you. Hopefully today you've been challenged, you know, just to realize all that we have, and sometimes it's through the lens of people who have struggled, and, you know, many people risk their lives to be able to vote. So hopefully on October 19th you'll be out there. That's what we really want to encourage you to do.